Oh, hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi, welcome back to another video. Today's video, this is going to be a deck profile video. So I was able to, again, get with some of my friends here in New York over the last weekend, get a few more videos in, some battles, and these are some of the decks from those recent battles. I think I post the deck videos after the battle, so the battle should already be out by the time you see this video. So if you want to see that, check the description. I'll link to the battle where I use this deck. Without further ado, today we are going to be doing a deck profile on Charizard VMax. I don't think a lot of people have been really thinking about this card for good reasons, right? If I'm honest with you, I think Charizard VMax is basically a worse version of Centiskorch in many ways. The whole point, like, you hit 300 damage and that you're just kind of like, you're just shy of an OHKO, right, on VMAXs. So the question is, okay, well, how can I maybe push it to that OHKO level in some form or fashion? So you're really looking to get anywhere between 310 and 340. That's what VMAXs are at right now. So you'll see in this deck kind of how we do that, and also an engine that sort of pushes this to hopefully be something that you can attack every single turn. But yeah, without further ado, we'll just get into the deck profile of Charizard VMax. All right, so for this deck profile, we are going to start with Charizard V. Charizard V, we have 3 of these Charizard Vs. I'll put that over there. Actually, I'll put one over here so you can kind of see it. So the key thing with this one is, it's just a regular V. Its first attack for 3 energy, does 80 damage, 3 colorless. And then its second attack for 2 fire and 2 colorless does 220. I honestly don't know what that says. I'm very bad at this, clearly. It's 220 and then there's some effect. Odds are you're not going to be hitting 220 with this. That doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, like, if you really need to, you'll do the 220 against something like a Zamazenta. But otherwise, there's not much of a reason to be running just the V, to hit with just the V, unless you really have to trade prizes in one way. But we have three of the, here, let me change the lighting real quick. It's a little bit better. It's a little bit better. So we have 3 of the Charizard Vs there. And then if we have 3 of the Vs, then we probably are going to also be running 3 of the Charizard VMax. So Charizard VMax, if you're not familiar with this one, its first attack for 3 energy, colorless, is 100. So a triple acceleration alone will do what you need to do for this one. And then for 5 energy, which is quite high, 3 fire, 2 colorless. I wish it was 2 fire, 3 colorless, because then you could just welder and attach a triple colorless and be done. But I'm sure they knew that you could do that, so they made this attack cost a little bit heftier. But for 5 energy total, you do 300 damage, 330 HP, so it's pretty beefy. But yeah, 300 damage is a lot, and that's kind of what this whole thing is going to revolve around. If you think about Centiskorch, Centiskorch is the other fire Pokemon that's going to be competing with this for, like, the best VMAX. I personally think Centiskorch is better, but, you know, if you really like Charizard and you want to play a Charizard deck, this will probably be the best Charizard out there that you can play. So, yeah, you're doing 300 damage, and you just really want to find those extra modifiers. And also, the 300 damage attack, you discard 2 energy from this Pokemon when you use it. So you also need to figure out a way to string these attacks together consistently. Obviously, you can do that with Welders. You could even do that if you wanted with Rose, but I would not recommend the Rose engine necessarily. But what we are going to do actually is use a Coalossal engine. So we have a 2-2 line of Rolycoly Coalossal. I don't have the in-between Pokemon. It was just so hard to find the space in this deck. You could maybe find space, though, if you look at this. But the idea here is that you're going to be accelerating a fire and a fighting energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So that's really good. Charge generator, that's what that does. The other added benefit here is you have an attacker in this if you really need a non-VMAX attacker. So like Decidueye, right? With a couple of the modifiers, you can knock out Decidueyes with this, and you're going to have a hard time getting knocked out in return. And 130, you're going to be doing a lot of damage on a Eternatus, but not enough for knockout, so that's not really what you're concerned about here. But more than anything, This is for accelerating the energy onto the Charizard VMax. So we have Charizard VMax, we have Coalossal. We also have one Volcanion, just in case we go second and we can get this out. I have maybe been lucky in my testing in that I was able to get this out a number of times. So this is a deck that you want to go second with because you can Welder, you can Volcanion, all that stuff. We also have one Galarian Zigzagoon. This is going to be one of those ways that we can maybe stretch to hit 310, 320, maybe even 330 if we get super lucky with scoop up nets. But this is just one small modifier. And then outside of that, the only other Pokemon we have two Dedennes to really help us get some draw power into this deck and also put some energy in the discard. And one Crobat V, just because you may want a crazy explosive turn early in the game, and so you can Dedenne, Crobat, and Supporter all in one turn, and that's a pretty crazy turn. I think in the video I have one game like that where I maybe blow through my deck, half of my deck by like turn 2 or something. So super good at finding you cards. Now, that's all the Pokemon. You could maybe find space in here for other attackers. That would be the main thing, but really I was just like, let's focus on Charizard VMax and see if we can make this work. But for your supporter line, as you can imagine, you have 4 Welders because you're playing a fire deck that needs a lot of fire. You also have 4 Professor's Research because you want some draw power. And then we have 2 Boss's Order. 2 Boss's Order are to like maybe bring something up that's hiding on the bench from that 300 damage. Or you might hit something for 300 and they're close to being knocked out. Maybe like a Zigzagoon ping or 2 away. And you're like, well, I don't want to waste another 300 hit on this thing on the second turn. Let me Boss's Order something else up, take that hit, and then maybe get those Zigzagoon pings a little bit later to take a bunch of prizes all at once. So that's another reason you might use the Boss's Order. So that's your supporter line. Pretty straightforward. You have Researches, you have Welders, and you have Boss's Order. Then for Pokemon Search, we have 4 Quick Balls. And then this is where it gets a little funky. I have 3 Pokemon communications. Now, we don't run a ton of Pokemon, but you do run Pokemon that you don't want to pitch away in the Coalossal especially, or maybe even a VMAX or 2. So Pokemon communication can hopefully save those if you need to go grab a Dedenne or Professor's Research in the same turn. And because of that, we are also running 2 Evolution Incense. Because we have fewer Pokemon in general, you may have a turn where you're like, I just need the VMAX or I just need the Coalossal. That's the only piece I'm missing. Evolution Incense is good with that. I could see playing around with this count, maybe doing a 3-2 of Incense to communication. That's kind of a personal preference. I am not saying that this deck is exactly right in any way, shape, or form. This is literally just like, I think maybe an interesting way to think about building this deck, and hopefully a way that if you can make it consistent over time, like with tweaking it, I think this style of engine is really good. So that is what we have for this Pokemon Search. And then we have 3 switches. You don't need to switch too much, but you might need to switch to get into a Volcanion early game, switch some things around. And we also have 3 scoop up nets. Again, if you need to switch some random things, maybe you need to, basically it's for the Galarian Zigzagoon pings, but you know, you only have 1 Zig and 3 scoop up nets. You might only get 1 or 2 pings in a game, but something to be considered. And then we are gonna have 3 rare candies. I have 3 rare candies instead of 2 because that has been the thing that has eluded me more than anything. There's a lot of draw power in this deck, but a lot of it is also discard based. So I want to, as much as I can find space, find the rare candies in conjunction with a Coalossal. So that's why there's 3. You could even go up to a 4. I've played around with a 3 and then a 3-3 line of the Coalossal Rolycoly. You can maybe even consider getting the middle evolution instead of a rare candy. Lots of ways that you could maybe slice this one. So go with whatever you think is going to work best, test it out. But this is just a first pass at that. And then here's where it gets interesting in terms of modifying the damage. So one option is certainly to play Vitality Band, right? You can play Vitality Band. You guarantee that extra 10 damage. Nothing your opponent can do to stop that necessarily. But maybe I'm going for a more high rolly version, but I am playing 1 Burning Scarf. Burning Scarf is there because a burn, if they attack you back, or if they've attacked you on a previous turn and they get burned, that actually does 20. Now 20 with 1 Zigzagoon ping will knock out the vast majority of VMAXs, 310s, 320, and 330 VMAXs. The only things that it won't knock out are things like Dreadnought VMAX. It won't knock out Caparajah. Well, you're fire, so yes, you will knock that out probably. But Dreadnought and I want to say Eternatus VMAX is at 340. So with Eternatus, you would need one Burning Scarf for 20 and a Zigzagoon. And if you get super lucky, they don't roll heads on the burn and they keep the burn, and that's all you need. So that's why I'm high rolling it a little bit with a Burning Scarf over a Vitality Band, because that extra 20 over a 10 makes it a little bit easier in my mind. But we have even more ways to maybe fudge the numbers a little bit. In terms of stadiums, we have Giant Hearth, just good at finding your fire energy. We also have Viridian Forest. Both of these are good for finding fire and or I should say, fighting energy. Also good at getting things in the discard like other energy, so you can accelerate it. And then the last stadium we have is Martial Arts Dojo. Now, if you're not familiar with that, if any of your Pokemon have fighting energy attached, they do 10 more damage. But if you are behind on prizes, then you do 40 more damage instead, which is perfect against any 340 HP Pokemon. So if you go behind on prizes, say you start with Volcanion, they knock it out, and if you find this early and you have a fighting energy attached, you are doing 340 damage. That's all you need to knock out any VMAX Pokemon that doesn't have some modifier on it. So for me, that is huge. That is, so between this, the Burning Scarf, and the Zigzagoon with Scoop Up Net combo, that is how we're really stretching to hit those bigger numbers if we need. And then we really get to the last thing here, which is the energy counts. So for energy, you are gonna have 8 fire energy, which seems pretty low, but again, you're accelerating from the discard, and you discard yourself on your own attack. So, I haven't had a huge time hard time finding energy, but just something to keep in mind. 8 fire. I went down to 3 fighting. Again, this is something you could play with. You definitely want to find at least 1 fighting energy early and get it into the discard or onto a Pokemon. Because once you have 1, then you can kind of loop it every turn as one of those extra energy. So that's why we went down to 3, is because only finding 1 didn't seem that difficult. So 8 fire, 3 fighting. And then finally, we had a little extra space for some stuff. And I also thought, you know what, if we don't find a Coalossal or it gets knocked out, but you have 3 energy on board, 3 fire, you can use triple acceleration to meet that energy requirement for a couple of turns. And now the main thing about this deck is gonna thrive off taking like big knockouts. If you are facing a single prizer deck, this is not gonna do well. Unless it's like a Decidueye that doesn't really have time to set up and you can KO them with Volcanion and Coalossals. But otherwise, you're really looking at like, you want to go off against really big VMAX Pokemon. That's what this deck is built for. But let me know what you think about Charizard VMax. Again, I haven't seen a lot of lists for this. This probably isn't a top tier deck if I'm perfectly honest with you. But if Charizard VMax is a Pokemon you're excited about for whatever reason, and you wanted to know what kind of a deck can be built around it, this is hopefully some inspiration for you to maybe go and build your own. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Check out the battle video. Subscribe if you like all this good stuff. And yeah, I will see you in a future video. Carpe awesome.